Hello and welcome to Take Refuge 3D with me, Peter. Welcome back, and if you're new here then just welcome. Now in today's video what we're going to talk about is Engon Pro. It's a plugin that I've made specifically with getting CAD and Engon based meshes ready for texturing and game engines as quickly as possible. So I have sold about, 1600 copies of this thing over the last 18 months. So there are a few users out here. So for this video, what we're going to do is we're going to show what's new, and we're also going to do a tutorial because some of the tutorials out there are a little bit outdated. So if you already own Engon Pro, you know it looks something like this, okay? It's got a lot of buttons that do a lot of different things that help you get your mesh ready for texturing software quickly, like adding vertex colors, creating low poly and high poly meshes that preserve the normal detail, refining low poly meshes, renaming things so you can get your naming conventions right for like marmoset and substance and stuff so you don't get mismatched names. It's got some UV tools and you can backtrack and amend. It's also got a one-click low poly button, which is aimed at your more low poly meshes, because it does quite a lot. Like if you put a really dense mesh into this, it is gonna, stall up Blender, but it does have its use case. Now, this is what Engon Pro used to look like, and this is what it looks like now. That's a lot cleaner. So I've added icons. You can see there's a big UI overhaul. You'll notice it doesn't say one-click low poly up here anymore. Okay, it says toggle workspace view, which takes you into a workspace view you can work on. So for example, if I make this a low poly mesh, I can go into the workspace view and then I can start to, refine my mesh and things like that. So yeah, okay, so you can refine your mesh like so. So this is a really cool feature, and then you can just toggle it off. I believe I've got it set to, if you hover over it, you'll see what shortcut I set. I think it was Control Alt N or Control Shift N, but you can just right click on it and change a shortcut. I've just set it up to a button on my mouse, so I can easily go in and out like that. So we've got these features. So the last update I did was just taking all your existing code and updating it to support Blender extensions. So what you can do with extensions is just like take your actual add-on file and drag and drop directly into there, and it will automatically update. So that is what it was, but the code itself, it wasn't modular. So now I've like separated out all of the scripts, because it was just one big long list of code, which was really confusing to work with. So I've made it modular, so now it's easier to extend, and I've made all these collapsible panels. So if it gets a bit chaotic on screen and you're just wanting to deal with, like, say for example refinement, you just have to have that one open, okay? And put icons that makes it easier to see. That's all new. So what else is new? The decimation. So we've got this decimation here. So let's have a look at decimation in the old version. So let's take a few of these mannequins and let's decimate. Let's make a low poly, create a low poly. We've made them all into low polys. That's great. Now let's decimate. And so now it's only working on one at a time, and then we have to paste our detail, and it can get really laggy on big meshes. So I have improved the code here as well. Now let's have a look at the same thing over here. So let's make a few. All right, so we've got a few there. So let's make our low poly. Okay, we can drag this across like that. Okay, let's go into workspace mode to see how we're working on it. So it's always going to follow the active object. So let's say I've just got this one active object, right? And she's quite high poly, okay? And these guys are all low poly. I can actually start dragging and they will all conform now to the active object. What you can also do, like let's say you were just working on like one screw and you got it perfect, you can then select the rest of your screws and you can paste the detail of the active object to the other objects. So this works a lot better now. Now if we go out of here and we just select a few of these and we go into workspace mode, they will be the only ones selected. So for example, if you were wanting to just work on 3 items at once and the scene's really cluttered like it is here, you can just go into workspace mode. You can make these ones high poly and you can see that they're all low. These ones are higher poly and those other ones are low poly. So that's a really handy workflow. So that's basically it now. Now there's a couple of things here, like if you so with the decimation mode as well, I've made it so that you can press D on the keyboard to control the decimation. So if I go left and right with D, I can control the decimation. So if I've got this one here, I'm just pressing D on the keyboard, as you can see, D. And if you want to change the shortcut for that, if it conflicts with your workflow, you find this button here which does the exact same thing, okay? But if you right click it, you can add a shortcut. So if you want to do it like as a completely different shortcut, or you just want to remove the shortcut, you can just remove it there. So I can, with the workspace mode, there is a little bit of a bug, or I might call it a feature. If you isolate something within workspace mode and then go out of workspace mode, it's gonna invert the rotation, but I don't know if this is a bug or a feature, because you might want to invert it. But if you do find yourself going back out of workspace mode and there's only 3 when there should be 7, just press the isolation / button. It can, I mean, I did code it out so that it would not do that, but I think that some people might want to work the other way around. So if you do notice that, it's because you've isolated something, because this does rely on the isolation function. So that's all good. Let's go into a little bit of a tutorial now. So the first tutorial I want to focus on is working with the sort of low poly workflow. Let's have a look at how we would work with this one. So we've imported it from Plasticity. Okay, so we want it to be n-gons, not tries. So we're just going to have a look at the wireframe. Okay, and this is currently tries, and this is currently in a preview, so you actually need to refacet it before you can work with it. And now we've got it in n-gon mode. So what we can do is we can go and open n-gon Pro. Okay, and we can zoom into this, and we'll make this a low poly. Okay, and this has got all different parts, and when you click make low poly, it adds a decimate modifier with a ratio of 35%. Now for certain things you would not want them to be 35%, so you can select these all of these bolts that we've got here, and once they're all selected, including these ones up here, right, we can go down to manage naming conventions and we can just rename these bolts. Okay, with a T. Okay, it's my Kiwi accent coming out. Okay, and these are all quite a low decimation, so let's just find something. We'll go into a refine, we'll press D. We don't even need to go into refine, we can just press D. And we can come out of workspace mode and go back in, and we can see them all on their own here. So if we go D, we start bringing these up. All right, those ones, and they're all up to 1. So we've got all of these ones here, but these ones might still be too high poly. So let's go back out of workspace mode and select these 3. Okay, I'm not going to go too hard on this. All right, and if we go into workspace mode, we can go down here and we can just press D and just drag to the left, and if we go here, you can see that you're not going to be looking at those close up, so those are reasonably low poly. And if we look at those, they are 74 faces each. We could probably get them even lower. Now look at these pieces, because they're 35%, and because these are quite low poly to begin with, they've gone all the way down, so we could just bring those back up, press D, and same with these 2 here. Okay, and we're starting to get something, we'll go to workspace mode, have a look at this guy, and let's bring the decimation down to this. With these curved objects, it's preserving a lot of the data as well. Okay, and then if we have a look at this guy here, it's got these bolts in the back here, so we actually want to have a look at that and see if we can reduce it down as well. And I think something like that could be fine. Okay, alright, and then because we've only done that on one side, we make that our active, paste the detail, and if we come across here we'll notice that is also at 0.19. And then maybe let's just paste the detail across to that. Let's see how low we can get these ones here. These ones do not need to be high at all. So we just want to maintain a little bit of curvature here. Okay, that's fine. Okay, and then is the curvature on that okay? Okay, so we've pretty much done, but we can take it further. So let's, oh, there's actually the feet down here as well. I forgot about the feet. And I believe for some obscure reason I did model some thing that you will never look at, but I think if we just bring this right down to, I don't know, 0.2, actually we can, this does not need to be very big at all. Okay, so this model here is pretty much done. If we go into our UV mode, you can see that our sharp edges are marked, so you could unwrap it by selecting sharps or whatever, but we may want to use different parts of our mesh to be textured different colors. So if we come over here and we go into attribute mode, so clicking here, we make sure we're in viewport mode and come over to attribute mode. That will allow us to see vertex colors. So if we come down to our UV tools, and let's say we want our steps, we want to like use vertex colors as masks in our texturing software, we can add a vertex color. We can take all of these, which might be, I don't know, some rubbery things, who knows. And I think this can be the same as the stairs. So if you want to like copy a vertex color, what you can do is you can take this into flat mode, right? And then you can just sample a screen color. So let's sample that and then add the vertex color. So we're now looking at this in a sort of a flat shading, and it looks quite cool. And look, we got all of our vertex colors. We got this whole mesh optimized really quickly. This is ready to go with the exception of the bolts. So now we can just select all the bolts because we already renamed them, right? And we can give them their own vertex color. Let's just give them a yellow. Okay, so they can stand out a little bit. Okay, and now we can come back out of flat shading back into matte cap, and I think that is ready to go into like Marmoset Toolbag or something, right? Or Substance Painter or Instamat, or straight into a game engine if you've already got textures, except for one thing, we haven't done our UVs. So with an object like this, because it's quite low poly, I would recommend doing your own UVs and hand cutting this. In my case, I'm just going to hit this unwrap, combine and pack, right? And this will use, it'll unwrap it, combine all the meshes into one UV map and pack it. Okay, so that is something that's really great. If we now open up the texture, you can see it's all packed. And if you've got a better packer like UV Pack Master, you can. Or you can do your UVs in another software like Rezom or something like that, which I think is really fun to work in. So I'm just going to come out of attribute mode, okay, and we can come out of workspace mode, and we've basically got a low poly mesh ready to go. So that is one workflow. The next workflow we're going to work with is a little bit, it's the low to high poly workflow, and I'll show you how that works. Okay, so over in Plasticity, I really quickly made this mesh. This is if we take a look at it, it's a little bit complicated. I kind of was messing around. I kind of intentionally made like really janky bits like this, you know, with weird bits like that. All right, and the purpose is I want to show you how, if you've got something like this and you don't really care about poly count, right, you can quickly make a low poly and a high poly over an Angon Pro. So let's just refresh. Okay, and let's make our low poly. So for our tolerance and angle, I'm actually going to bring this up to about 34. I want to make this a little bit more low poly. If you've got your angle and you've got the set to, like, you know, bringing in all the detail for your low poly, you're going to run into problems. So we can bring this up to 34. Let's just turn wireframe on to see how it looks. Okay, and then let's select everything and refacet to Angon. Okay, how did that come out? That's okay, so that's okay, but let's just, I don't want these to be too janky, so let's just bring this down a little bit. Let's bring it down a bit. And that's okay. I think that's a nice low poly. Okay, we've got a nice low poly there. Turn our wireframe off. Okay, so we've got this all ready to go. So let's go over to Angon Pro and let's just go and make a low poly. Okay, so we got our low poly, but obviously it's less than 10,000 faces, so that's great, but it's not quite where we want it to be yet. So let's close these down. Let's keep our refine open and let's just very slightly, look, I just needed to raise that up a little bit just by pressing D on my keyboard and moving my mouse. Okay, and let's get that one back up a little bit higher. Let's go into focused workspace mode so we can actually see the poly count as we work. So I think that's fine. This guy down here, we can bring this down and notice how I've got these cables, they're connected to the mesh. This is going to be a background prop. It took me like 20 minutes to make, so let's just reduce it down. If we start to get a few artifacts, it doesn't matter on the low poly because we'll be rebaking our normals. Okay, but we don't want too many artifacts, right? Because that means there's lots of poles. Okay. And just notice in workspace mode, when you select the active object, it shows you the wireframe in detail. If you click off, you can still see the wireframe, but it's a little bit more faded. So, and look at these bolts down here. These do not need to be high poly at all. So let's see if we can just get those. Got 192 faces. Let's see how low we can get those. Not that much lower actually. Okay. Now there's this feature here. So let's say we want to get this quite a bit lower. We want to reduce this down to like 900, right? So we can now go into edit mode. Right. And if we go out of workspace mode and back into workspace mode, we'll notice that we've got that isolated. And we can go press 3 to go into face mode, or choose it up there. And just select all these faces here. And then deselect all these faces. Yeah. Alright, and then we can click this button here in edit mode, exclude faces from decimation. Okay, and when we go out, you can see that that's gone right down because we've excluded those faces. But if we just bring this back up, I don't know if that improved our situation or not. So let's go back a few steps. It didn't improve our situation in that case, but it's something that you can do if you want to maintain some detail in some areas. Okay, so I'm going to keep this down about just from whenever that artifact goes away. Okay, so that is fine. So if we select the whole object, we're still at about 8,000. So let's try and reduce this guy down. We do not need this to be nice and curvy. We'll reduce this guy down. Okay, and that's about it. So then what we want to do is we want to make sure this comes out of its plasticity inbox. Okay, so we'll go move to scene collection and it's out of the inbox, and then we want to just select everything And these backup and data, you can just collapse those. This is just used as a backup. If everything goes wrong, you've got a backup of your files, okay? And then the data one is used to transfer the normal data back on your low poly and on your high polys as well. So we can select everything and we can just hide it. And then we want to go back to our plasticity, which I've got under import. I'm going to refresh. Let's go out of here. Now this is the one that's going to be our high poly. So we want to bring this angle right back down to 10, and we can play around with this. And let's just go into workspace mode so we can see our wireframe. And let's just refacet that to Ngon. Alright. Back down at Ngon Pro. And we can make our high poly. Right. And if we go out, it looks exactly the same, but this is the high poly where we're going to bake our details from. So because we've imported them from Plasticity and they've both got the same names, so our low group and our high group, we can now unhide our low group. Okay, we can, and then you can export both of them as an FBX, right, wherever you like, and take it into your favorite texturing software. Now, my favorite texturing software for these kind of assets is Marmoset Toolbag. So in this case, it's really easy. You just bring in a baker, you load up your asset that you saved, you bring it in, right? And you can see here, we've got all of these shading artifacts. So let's turn our normals on and our ambient occlusion on, okay? And then you can hit preview material, okay? And we'll just call this, I've already done a practice run, so I'll just call this ASA. Alright, save. Okay, and we've got our previewed material. There you go. Okay, then what you can do is you can sort of select an object, alright? You can estimate the offset, and then you can go back up to your bake project and hit preview. Alright, and you can just improve it. And this is why I love Marmoset so much, right? And it's just automatically baking things on the fly. And if we go up to our bake project, look at that, perfect normals. I mean, if you go close inspection, you're going to find some artifacts here and there. But for this kind of asset, I made it in 20 minutes. I just completely optimized it in a few minutes, exported my low and high, and now I've got this. So the steps to make that were really quick. And this is the kind of asset that you might not pay too much attention to. I've textured this really quickly with a texture project here. It's got a couple of paint layers. But if we inspect this closely and bring our paint layer up to the top, I've got plastic cables. I've got differences of color at the front. Marmoset's really great because you can just like select UV islands like that and add different, you know, and then I could just fill it with this paint layer like so. And then, so now I've got red on the top as well, but just as an example. So this is really, really quick, done really well. And you can just imagine that being in a background in a video game that you wouldn't pay too much attention to. It's quite high poly for, it's not for the Nintendo Switch, but for Unreal Engine nanite type thing. It's still 10,000 polys, which isn't, well, how many polys was it actually? If we get rid of our high group, just got our low, a 7,200, so it's not even that high poly. So that is really, I don't know, take of that what you will. So that's Ngon Pro. You can buy it. By the way, if you saw my Plasticity mesh before, I am a Plasticity affiliate, and you can use the code REFUGE10 to get a 10% discount off Plasticity. I basically, because of the Blender bridge, I basically view Plasticity as the best hard surface plugin for Blender. That's basically how I see it. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Tschüss!